Testing to see how the audio sounds. I need to put a disclaimer here because if I don't, then, well, you know. This video contains negative opinions about the TF2 Community Workshop. If you can't stomach that, then don't watch this video. If you can, then please do not harass any workshop creators, none of whom are featured in this video. Only their items, not their names. Okay, what's the deal? Why have we been flooded with cheesy cosmetics that look like something out of an Oriental trading catalog? There's been this shift in items from those that appropriately fit the aesthetic of TF2 and the personalities of the mercenaries to, well, this. Several factors are at play here. First and foremost, Valve seems to have completely omitted any kind of quality control for item selection. They didn't always do this. A vast majority of older workshop contributions fit in the game just fine. A little wackiness here and there, you know, for some spice, that's fine. But these days, Valve barely adheres to their own workshop guidelines. Yeah, there are in fact guidelines emplaced by Valve for TF2's Community Workshop. They do acknowledge in this guide that the game's art style does evolve somewhat over time, but the guidelines suggest that the core of the game's aesthetic and tone should at least be maintained, or loosely adhered to. Of course, there were notable exceptions from earlier community updates, and TF2's always had some wacky items, gaudy unusual effects, yada yada, but these were the exception, not the norm, either because they were low in number or rare to begin with. But for the past few years, we've mostly been given holiday-themed cosmetics that are just out of place and unbefitting of the game's art style, and a majority of recent additions are also multi-class or all-class, pushing items further away from the personalities of the mercenaries and more into generic hat territory. The only reprieve that we get from holiday hell is in the summer, when Valve decides to chuck out a fresh box for us to open. But even the non-holiday themed items are either generic multi-class hats that aren't reflective of the mercenaries' personalities whatsoever, or they tread so far into wacky, zany, kooky territory that they just don't belong. Some of these newer items do get a pass, in that they look like they fit in the game, but everything else has been flipped around. Items that are befitting of TF2 are now the exception, not the norm. And cosmetics aren't the only additions to suffer from Valve's lack of quality control. We've also received incomplete, buggy, and poorly tested maps that play terribly as a result, some of which are just lazy holiday reskins of existing mediocre maps. We've been given lazily designed war paints that use solid, overly saturated colors that have no business being in the game. Not to mention some official additions that use stock images or clip art that are passed off as original work. And we've been swamped with overly flashy, bright, and painfully saturated unusual effects that are mostly just recolors of the same wispy energy trail particle animations with slight variations in speed, direction, and volume of community sparkles. And don't get me started on the circling, orbiting, hovering, or falling clip art. So what gives? The simplest answer is that Valve is intentionally picking these items and simply doesn't care about adhering to their own guidelines, which is really frustrating. Valve is likely deduced that flashy unusual effects slapped onto generic holiday-themed hats earns them the same, if not more money in the short term than a well-thought-out cosmetic case. After all, this is the winning microtransaction formula for video games these days. So, they don't bother with thoughtful item selection. Why should they bother? Why bother when they can just get Ron the intern to pick out 15 items over his lunch break that fit the current holiday theme and boom, there's your update. They're sacrificing quality for money. And what's unfortunate about strictly holiday-themed updates is that no one wants these items outside of the holiday season, unless they're unusual, or happen to be one of the 2 or 3 passable cosmetics for that year that still loosely fit the game's art style and, you know, kinda look good. But sadly, most of the recent cosmetic additions to TF2 are immediately chucked onto the community market out of gamblers' remorse for a mere fraction of the consumer's money back. And if that wasn't the obvious sign, players do not like these cosmetics. In fact, we're sick of them. There's a reason why we mostly see older hats being used in-game over new ones. People like these hats more. Older hats generally look better and fit the personalities of the classes that use them, or fit the art style of the game if they aren't for a specific class. They simply look like they belong. But Valve has stopped adding unique items like this. We just get this holiday crap. And I hate that Valve is doing this, but but I understand why they do it. They do it for maximum profit at minimum expenditure. But to me, it's a no-brainer to just go back to how they did things back in the day. You know, chuck a few festive items in, mixed in with a bunch of, cosmetics that fit the game. Better items that people would want to acquire and use outside of the holiday season means that more people would not only open more boxes, but continue to open them after the holiday is over. Maybe an 80s haircut for the demo man, or perhaps a fireman getup for the pyro, an Einstein hairdo for the engineer. Hell, even a well-designed pop culture reference that fits nicely in the game. Nah, fuck that shit. Another beanie, please. Another pair of antlers. How about another Crohn's Dome ripoff? Or perhaps a Christmas tree? Or perhaps some random holiday shit slapped onto your player model? Or perhaps another Christmas tree? Another elf hat, perhaps? How about some random objects turned into shoes, a top hat, or a wacky towering pillar of shit? Are you sure we can't sell you on these Christmas trees? Valve, please, in the off chance you're listening to this, no one wants these items. The telltale sign is your own community market. The demand is reflected in the prices of the items and the volume of people trying to get rid of them. Not only that, but you're telling the talented workshoppers, the ones that make high quality, fitting items for TF2, that their efforts are worthless. You're reinforcing bad habits that only lazy workshoppers approve of, because it streamlines their acquisition of your money. My opinion on all of this is that Valve no longer adheres to their own quality standards, and if we still care about the game, as a player base, as creators, what have you, then we should be the ones to step up to the plate and uphold ourselves to some higher quality standards, right? You would think that workshop creators would do this, that's the logical next step, and that they wouldn't dare think about exploiting this lack of attentiveness from Valve, no sir.
Wrong!
Before I continue with this, these statements aren't meant to be all-encompassing generalizations. There are plenty of workshop contributors who still make amazing items that fit in the game. These creators should be praised for their work. They take the time and put forth the effort to make fitting items for TF2. Thank you for those of you that still do this, and I'm sorry for how your hard work gets overlooked for mediocrity. The rest of this is addressing the more lazy, greedy, and narcissistic sides of the workshop. In my first video, people were rather upset that I dare put some of the blame on the workshop for these bad items, saying that, oh, it's all Valve's fault, and that the workshop isn't responsible in any way for what gets accepted into the game. Listen, the blame goes both ways. It's not just one party or the other. Valve may accept the items, but the workshop makes the items. And much like recent cosmetic additions, it seems like creators that abide by those loose workshop guidelines are now the exception, not the norm. During every update season over the past few years, the workshop has been flooded with mediocre garbage. And that's because workshoppers take the lazy route of making generic items that require minimal effort or thoughtful design, because they just want to get paid. Valve keeps picking their crap for whatever reason, so instead of making good items for TF2, they keep making the crap for a paycheck. And it's frustrating, because these creators know full well that the holiday bait and generic wacky cosmetics aren't liked by most players, but they keep making them for money anyway. And workshoppers also complain about Valve's acceptance of low quality items, but then they stoop down to their level and keep making low quality items. And when you try to call them out on this, the part where they're not caring about or paying attention to the game they're making items for, they start spewing out bullshit justifications, like they're being forced to make these cosmetics. Or they say that Valve doesn't tell them what they want, or that they're just following the trend of Valve accepting certain items, so they just keep making more of the same shit. First of all, Valve tells you what they want, right here. Valve doesn't seem to adhere to their guidelines anymore, so workshoppers take that as an excuse to be lazy for money, but it's right there. Second, no one is holding a loaded gun to your head telling you to make these items for TF2. This is what you think you're saying.
Well, if I don't make this cheesy shit, it'll never get added to the game. I'm being forced to do it. I don't have a choice.
But this is what you're really saying.
Well, I want my paycheck, so I need to make whatever Valve accepts. My chances go up if I make more of this generic and holiday shit. The easier, the quicker, the better.
There's a balance to be maintained between doing it for money and making something appropriate for the game. That's what I think. You can do it for money, don't get me wrong, sure, but at least try. And third, trends are just an excuse for lazy copycatting and a lack of effort. And I think even Valve is getting tired of this, because in the past Scream Fortress update, they went back to workshop submissions that were years old, in my opinion, so they could add something that was at least passable. All of this bullshit boils down into one thing: getting paid. It's easier to make a generic or holiday-themed item rather than taking the time and putting forth the effort to design something that reflects a single class's personality or the art style of the game. It's easier to take an existing concept, change it a little bit, and then call it a new item for a quick attempt at cash. It's easier to take existing work, like clip art, stock images, pre-made textures, what have you, and then call it your own. This lazy work ethic is a poison on the workshop right now, and it's only exacerbated by Valve. And some workshoppers are so deluded in their Hugfest inner circles that they've become complacent, accepting, and even encouraging of this level of mediocrity, because it earns them money at minimum expenditure, just like Valve. These guys care way more about the money than the game they're making items for, and it shows. It shows in their work, and it shows in what they say. And at this point, it's wasted energy to try to encourage them to do better. They're okay with churning out half-assed work, and as soon as you try to show them reasons for why people don't like this, or perhaps a submission that took some time, effort, and thought that trumps the work that they made, they go on the offensive. They cry, "Oh, well, it's not a competition," despite the workshop being a competition to see who can make the better item for players to upvote. They say things along the lines of, "Oh, well, it's okay to use free assets instead of making something on your own for money. You don't need to spend time on your work. It's not about fairness. What we're doing is acceptable because Valve puts our lazy trash in the game, and you should just like it, okay? You can't say my items are bad. You can't say we're trashing the art style. That's mean. That's harassment." They like pulling the harassment card a lot, don't they? These inner circles toss aside workshop standards for money, as if though they were freelance artists looking for clients. Listen, guys, sorry to tell you, but for all of us looking in, that doesn't fly here. This isn't the open market. You are making items for a video game. You have to appeal to fans of that game in order to get upvotes on your workshop submissions. You should adhere to the minimum requirement of making those items look like they belong. You must pay attention to the game you're making items for and the guidelines for item submissions. That is the standard. That's what you sign up for when you submit your work on the community workshop. So if you don't adhere to those standards that are expected of you, people won't like your submissions, and they will tell you that. You're gonna lose respect and catch flack, no matter what Valve does. These are the inner circles spearheading the TF2 workshop. These are the ones that set the standard for new creators coming into the workshop, and I can't imagine what competent creators must feel like. You know, the ones that take the time and put forth the effort to make items befitting of the game, when their work is placed on the same pedestal as these guys. This on the same level as this. It's sad, because I know these lazy creators can do better. They just choose not to. They have why try harder syndrome, just like Valve. Why try harder to earn your paycheck when you don't have to? Why bother upholding yourself to a higher standard, a better work ethic when others aren't holding you to it? Just give me my damn money. There is this unfortunate symbiotic relationship between Valve and the workshoppers. The workshoppers make the trash, Valve chucks it in the game, and they both get paid. They're the only ones that benefit. We just get their crap dropped on our laps. What actually shocks me more is that players are still willing to spend the money on opening these cases that are filled with mediocre items. Though, thankfully, it seems like people quickly came to their senses during the Smithmas 2021 update, given how quickly the price of the new cases and items plummeted on the community market. And, on top of that, a lot of people were vocal about the overall lack of quality in the cosmetics and the maps. Hopefully, the drop in revenue and volume of outcries is enough to get Valve to listen, because it seems the only way to get Valve to do anything these days is to hurt their bottom line. Well, sadly, the workshop ain't gonna do better until Daddy Valve spanks him on the butt and tells him to. But we can't expect Valve to do anything, so what can we do? To the workshoppers engaging in these lazy practices, I encourage you to stop. Stop giving Valve the option to pick this crap. You creators are the front line for what gets added, because you guys make the items. You show Valve what we as players think is acceptable. It's on us now. So if you keep making shit, we're gonna keep getting shit. You creators must once again pay attention to the game you're making items for. You're gonna get a lot more respect if you do. And yeah, respect doesn't pay the bills, but it's your choice. But I already know what's gonna happen. I already know what they're gonna do. They're gonna keep taking the lazy route, keep getting paid, and then they're gonna whine when people say their items suck. To the workshoppers who actually pay attention to the game they're making items for, keep going. Keep making your kick-ass items that look like they belong. You are the last pillar of creative lifeblood that this workshop has, and we can't lose you now. And what can we as regular players do? Well, our options are few. Should we learn how to make our own cosmetics, which is the most common brain-dead retort from these inner circles on the workshop? No, I'm not a baker, but I know what a good cupcake is supposed to taste like. Demanding for us to make our own items because we don't like yours is like watching you try to sell salty lemonade. Salt is cheaper than sugar, so you can more easily turn a profit. You salesmen then get upset that people don't like your salty lemonade, and then you complain when people ask for sweet lemonade. Even demand for the consumer to make their own because they don't like yours. We'll just stop drinking your lemonade, man. It's such an ass-backwards take that it's laughable.
But we should praise them for even bothering to make the lemonade for us. We should be happy they make anything at all anymore.
No, we should not. We shouldn't become accepting of a mediocre product that no one wants to buy. The point is, speak with your wallets. If you don't like the items, don't open the cases. These guys don't get paid, and Valve's bottom line gets hurt. If you like an item, say that you like it. Vote for it on the workshop if it hasn't been added yet. If you don't like an item, say that you don't like it. Downvote it. Tell Valve and the workshop. You are allowed to say that you don't like something. You workshoppers are getting pushback because you made something people don't like. You're engaging in business practice that we as consumers find unacceptable. You don't get to blame the consumer when they don't like your product. Negative criticism and people disliking what you make on a public platform are not forms of harassment. And if you can't accept that, then don't post online. But you get paid anyway, so what the fuck does it matter to you? People say, if you don't like it, don't buy it. And they're right. I'm not gonna spend a dime on this trash, but I still care about this game. I still care about getting good, quality items and updates. Is this desire wasted? Yeah, probably, but I'm not gonna roll over and accept a change for the worse. At least not quietly. That's all I gotta say. Bye.
Let's look at them.